If this is what you think of Hamilton, then you don't know Hamilton. My name's Doug Muir, and this is why Hamilton doesn't suck.
Here are the top 5 spooky places in Hamilton. Hey guys, I'm Realtor Doug Muir here, and on today's episode of Why Hamilton Doesn't Suck, we're going to get spooky. We're going to check out the 5 spookiest places in Hamilton, not including Tent City. So the first stop on our Hamilton's spookiest location is the Hermitage. The Hermitage was built in 1830. A family lived there with 5 children and a niece. In the late 1800s, a coachman named William Black lived on the property and caught the eye of the niece. A torrid love affair blossomed between the two, and when William Black approached her uncle to ask permission to marry his niece, he became enraged and denied the marriage. The coachman, distressed and heartbroken, headed to the back of the property and he hung himself from the wooden rafters of the carriage house. To this day, local lore states that on the night of the full moon, you can catch a glimpse of William Black walking between the carriage house and the ruins, calling out grieving for his lost love. What's remaining of the Hermitage you see now is what happened after a fire that happened in 1934. It was then purchased by the city of Hamilton in 1974. Ghost walks are conducted regularly at this location, where you can hear many more of the haunted tales on eerie moonlit nights. So our second spooky location in Hamilton is Dundurn Castle. Dundurn Castle was the home of Sir Allan MacNab in pre-Confederation Canada. The grounds surrounding the castle have a violent and bloody history. There were 11 men hung for treason across the street in 1813. Cholera victims were also transferred to plague sheds near the property. Sir Allan MacNab and his family still remain in ghostly form within the castle. The most famous ghostly legend at Dundurn Castle is that of the Lady in White. Many visitors and staff have reported seeing the apparition of a woman dressed in a white gown. Some believe she may be Sophia MacNab, the wife of Sir Allan MacNab, the castle's original owner. The Lady in White is often seen gliding through the halls or gazing out of windows. Other paranormal activity include footsteps and unexplained noises, apparitions of soldiers, cold spots, and temperature drops, objects moving on their own, and hearing voices and whispers. Are you brave enough to visit Dundurn Castle? You can always go on a spooky night when there's a full moon. Number 3 on our list of spooky Hamilton is Century Manor. Intellectually unstable, ruin-minded, incurable, lunatic, insane, mad in the brain, defective. Over 140 years ago, these were common descriptions for patients who occupied this grand Victorian structure in Hamilton known as the Hamilton Insane Asylum. Century Manor is the main building, and it's the only remaining of once large hospital. Century Manor continues to tell its story as a pivotal part of Hamilton's history. With nearly 300 patients dying over a 50-year period, the remains of this asylum has been speculated by some as haunted. Others suggest it's more haunted by the past of experimental treatments and misguided souls. Now we have to remember, what was considered lunatic back in those days was actually pretty wild. If you were an overthinker, if you had women trouble, if you had jealousy, if you smoked tobacco, had business troubles, superstition, immoral lifestyles, novel reading, and many more could have been a reason to end up in this asylum, which is crazy. The story of those at Century Manor deserve to be told and is a constitute to the patients' unheard voices left trapped inside the asylum. So number 4 on our list of spooky Hamilton locations is the Battlefield House in Stony Creek. To date, strange and interesting reports have been circulating about a ghost who lives inside the Battlefield House. Apparently they linger around and roam around the premise of that house. Battlefield House was the homestead of the widow Mary Jones Gage and her 2 children. During the War of 1812, the Gage residence was forced to become headquarters of the invading American troops who occupied the house. Reports of ghosts include antique pieces, ones that Mrs. Gage would have used, disappearing from a room only to be found days later in a completely different area of the house. It is also said that Mr. Gage likes to fiddle around with electrical curtains, the vacuum cleaner, and the computers. Why would Mary Jones Gage still be living within the walls of Battlefield House? One reason stands most prominent. Currently, the whereabouts of Mrs. Gage's body is a mystery. Her remains were said to have been placed in a lead-lined casket at the First United Church in Hamilton that burned down in 1969. This fire destroyed what was meant to be her final resting place when she died in 1841, and her remains, along with those of several other early settlers, were to have been relocated to the Woodland Cemetery in Burlington, where a plaque in their memory was placed. Mary Jones Gage and her headstone disappeared and never made it to Burlington. Most say that her lost soul found its way back to her home at Battlefield House. There's also said to be high energy on the battlefield itself, People report to have witnessed ghostly, misty soldiers walking across the field as if they were marching to the battle. As with most other haunted battlefields, sounds of cannons firing can sometimes be heard, and sounds of war echo prominently throughout. So last stop on our Hamilton Spooky Tour, number 5, is the Hamilton Scottish Rite. Stories of ghosts have surrounded this iconic Hamilton structure for centuries. In 1913, George Tuckett left his home to visit his love interest, where she murdered him in her bed. His butler found him there and moved him back to his home office. A lady in a white dress is often seen on the stairs, and some people feel a chill and gets goosebumps on their back as they walk down. The property was also used as a military headquarters and hospital during the First World War. And like many other war sites, ghostly soldiers are reported to be seen there. The former mansion is now a meeting place for the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. It has the largest cathedral in Canada with hand-painted backdrops, a pipe organ, majestic chandeliers, plus a spooky dungeon in the basement that terrifies the guards on patrol. The Scottish Rite is also spotted in popular TV shows like The Umbrella Academy, Murdoch Mysteries, and Crimson Peaks. There we go, guys. There's our list of 5 spooky places you can visit this Halloween. Remember, some of these places you might have to call in advance to get in, and you can also visit these places year-round. But during Halloween, it always has that spooky feel. Alright guys, I'm Realtor Doug Muir, and this is another episode of Why Hamilton Doesn't Suck, Spooky Edition.